Hey guys, um, today I'm going to discuss about Aspergers and violence and how they might correlate. I've made about 4 or 5 videos on this topic, and my opinions have kind of changed over the years, but also somewhat overall remain the same. But being a kid, I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, watching, my heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Rambo, Predator, Die Hard, and a million other movies, Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal. When I was a kid, that stuff really appealed because we didn't really have the MCU and all that crap that's out today. Not in my generation. I mean, we had the original Batman with Michael Keaton, but that was pretty much it. Overall, if you were a kid, you either watched both Saturday morning cartoons, wrestling, and action movies, or you watched one or the other. Me, I grew up sort of on my own. I watched a lot of movies. One of my favorites was Terminator 2. And I always liked playing with action figures and collecting them. And I would set them up and have them battle each other. And I used to be obsessed with it. And my mom didn't understand why I'd always be playing with my action figures and why I'd be obsessed with the action and the fighting. No. Correction. Just because a person is into violence as a kid and they watch that and know that it's all an act doesn't mean that they will grow up to be a killer or to harm other people in any way, shape, or form, as long as they know that it's a fantasy. The problem is, a lot of people do not know, or don't know how to distinguish the fact that a video game is just a video game, that you can't go out and kill a bunch of police officers without having a consequence, like in the video game. I mean, rather than ban violent video games and violent media altogether, I just think there needs to be a better education that people, kids especially, because they're prone to not realizing what's real and what isn't, to know that, it's not real and that you can't do stuff like that in real life. I used to think that you kill somebody, they'll come back to life as a kid, like in the movies, because I'd see these actors alive later on, because I was a dumb kid and I didn't know no better. But as long as there's some kind of education, people can learn from it, and they'll realize that you cannot go around doing these things, and that prison or jail is not a place that a person should ever have to be in. Now with my next topic, Elliot Rodger and all these mass shooters and their motives and why they did what they did, I can only come up with a conclusion that really they had nobody to speak to and nobody to turn to. It could have all been prevented if someone had just listened to them, like the way you guys are listening to me, but if someone actually sat down with them and listened to them, and listened to what they had to say, all those shootings could have been prevented. I guarantee you that. Even Columbine included too. I mean, I get that those guys were bullied, but if you look at it, they didn't shoot the guys who bullied them. They shot their friends and a bunch of random people. What kind of shit is that? I mean, if I was bullied and I was constantly attacked all the time, and I planned to do some evil shit like that, it sure as hell would not be no random people. That's what I don't understand about these mass shooters. They've always gone out and killed random people that had nothing to do with what was going on in the situation. And they just go around just killing randomly, just for a kill count, I think, because mentally they are sick. I mean, I get where Elliot Rodger was coming from, but at the same time, some of it kind of did seem like an act. See, now the guy his father was a famous director who directed the Hunger Games. And the same thing with the Virginia Tech shooter, too. Supposedly he had Aspergers and schizophrenia, and he was diagnosed in a mental psych ward and bought a gun like 2 days later. I don't know how that would happen. Out here in California, if you're 5150, you lose all gun rights right there and then, on the spot, on site. And the cops come to your house and take your firearms away from you. and you can't own one until you can prove to a judge that you're of good moral character. I actually could be wrong about it. It might actually be permanent that a person loses their gun rights. But yeah, I mean, I'm not any way, shape, or form condoning what those guys did. Elliot Rodger supposedly did have Aspergers, and so did Adam Lanza, that shot Sandy Hook up. But the thing is, though, the media says a lot of stuff, and it's really hard to also, again, distinguish what is fact or made up. And there's really no way to know the real truth. I mean, none of us were there, so we can't say what really truly happened. I mean, I'd love to know what really happened and what caused all this. But you notice another thing, too, with the whole Adam Lanza thing? They never actually released the name of the victims. 'Cause I tried to look it up to find out. That's what makes me to believe that that article could be a farce altogether. But then again, I don't see why the media would do something like that. But the media does need ratings, and I guess anything that's a shock will get them up that way, or get them off, rather. I mean, I started watching those movies when I was a kid, and I was enamored by them. Arnold Schwarzenegger was my hero. I wanted to be Arnold. I want to go around killing bad guys and beating them up and being the hero. I mean, I think every kid feels that way. I mean, it's part of pretty much being normal. I mean, pretty much everybody wants to be a tough guy. Everybody wants to be a cowboy. Everybody wants to be the man. In my later years, I started getting into James Bond. You know, I was about 10 years old, and I was totally obsessed with it, and to this day I'm still obsessed. My style of dress, the stuff I collect, pretty much everything. My whole life is kind of modeled after James Bond. I always wanted to be him, and because he gets women, gets nice cars, goes to exotic locations, and I want that lifestyle. But again, that's not real either. That's a false. You know, somehow, you can live in a fantasy in your mind, and you can think about it, dream about it all day long. As long as you know at the end of the day it's never going to come true, that it's just there. And there's times I've imagined I'd be with a girl who I'd known for years, who turned me down. And when I finally did sleep with her, I thought that she'd be in love with me, but that wasn't the truth at all. And it's all in your mind. It's however you think. But as long as you know that that stuff's not real, you'll be okay. And with Elliot Rodger, another thing I noticed was sort of the way he spoke. It was in a monotone sort of monologue almost. And it was sort of hard almost to take him seriously. You'd think that he was almost speaking in terms of like poetry, the way he would speak and talk about how he was angry that couples were together and that no woman wanted him. I mean, I already know why I have a hard time getting a woman. He should have assessed why he couldn't get a woman. And it's easy to be with a woman, but keeping one is the problem. Getting a woman's really not all that hard. I mean, that's why prostitution is the oldest profession in the book. People go out and see prostitutes because they have no other alternative, or they go out and they see drug addicts, women who are drug addicts on the street that they pick up like I have done, which is actually not really right of me to do. I've done wrong for doing that because these women are not of sound mind. And even if they give consent, it's not really a real consent. It's also a farce of a consent because they're not of the right mind since they're blasting on drugs. But also the drugs also make them very aroused, so to speak. That's why I think they're easy to coerce, so to speak. And as far as keeping, a partner goes, it's all about the values that a person has. Like for me, I'm not family oriented, even though I take care of my mother who's disabled. I never really had much family. My father was a piece of shit and a deadbeat. And his family doesn't even talk to me either. Every time I see them, they only ask me about him, and I haven't seen the guy in almost 30 years, and they still ask me about him. It's irritating. And I never had much family. I always envisioned that when I did find someone someday, a partner, that they would just fall in love with me and that we would build our own life together without their family or anyone else being involved. And I thought I could find someone who was like me, who would understand that we come from the same waters, and that we're one and the same, and that we both want to build the same thing. But it seems like I'm the only person that wants to build the type of relationship that I want. There's not a single soul on the planet that seems to relate or understand where I'm coming from about keeping a relationship private between you and your loved one, and that no one else should be a part of it. Not the family, not your kids, even though kids come first, not your friends, but you and your partner need to communicate and have that relationship going. Otherwise, it'll cease to exist. With my ex-girlfriend, we would fight every day because she didn't seem to understand where I was coming from, and in the end, it just looked like I was nothing but a control freak. And that wasn't really the case at all, although, I did a lot of bad things as well, and so did she. The relationship was not a good relationship because she was with me out of need, not because she really wanted to be with me. She said that if I left her, she'd commit suicide. And one day I got so pissed off, I told her, you know what, go ahead, kill yourself. Because I was that pissed off at her. She would never give me what I want and never would listen to me. It'd always be a nonstop battle and a nonstop fight. And I thought that, she understood me and that she loved me. But it was also a false love. And there's a lot of false love out there. A lot of people that you see together, it may not be all rainbows and unicorns like you think. There's probably a lot of hurt behind those closed doors, and a lot of pain and suffering that you and I don't know about, that we can only guess. Whatever we see out there in the picture perfectness of things that, whatever appearances aren't what they are cut out to be, so to speak. And you never know. I looked like I was happy in my pictures in my relationship. I can show you guys, which I will later on. But that meant nothing. By the time of the second month or third month, I already was angry and fed up with her. The honeymoon phase was over because her family involved themselves in the relationship, and I warned her before we got together that if her family would get involved, that it would never work out between us. And I'd warned her, and I've warned every single one of my partners, keep our relationship private. I don't want your family being a part of it. I don't care to know your family. I don't care to meet your family. I want to be with you, and I want to be alone, and I want to be left alone in peace. And there's not anybody out there that can see the bigger picture and can see where I'm coming from. And it's like talking to a brick wall. And I feel like even now I might be doing that as I'm making this video for you guys. And it's just not fair. I'm sure there's somewhere out there in the world that someone can relate to what I'm saying. I've lived a crazy life. I've done a lot of crazy things. Some bad things, some good things. Growing up in a dysfunctional household takes a toll on you and your well-being. I take it one day at a time. Another thing I'll say is, violence and hypersexuality kind of go hand in hand. Those who have a very high sex drive are also prone to violence. And if you have Aspergers like I do, oh boy. Or bipolar or some kind of other mental defect, you tend to be, you notice people who are very sexual people are also very violent too. If you look in your close circle, you'll see. Those who are also hypersexual also fight a lot too, so that's my proof right there. Hypersexual people don't just want to just love, they want to be respected, and they want to prove their points, and they want to do what they want to do in peace without being bothered, like I don't want to be bothered. And I just want to get my point across and say that, you know, I can help out someone who's in the same boat that I'm in, hopefully lead them in the right direction. Because I know there's people out there who are hurting, feel like they're different from the rest of the world. And autistic people, Asperger's people, are like the X-Men, the outcasts of society. And they strive for better, but they get pushed back and marginalized constantly. And with today's woke movement, it doesn't focus on the topics it should focus on. Like autism, so-called autism awareness is not what it's cut out to be. They need to go more in depth about helping these families and helping the children out and giving them what they want. Not just what the family wants, not what the parents wants. Helicopter parenting fucks everything up royally. And if they could abolish that somehow, it'd be a good thing, but I know they won't be able to, because you can't really tell somebody how to raise their kid. If they're bad parents, they're going to be bad parents regardless. And there's nothing you or I could do about it. We can tell them till we're blue in the face, it ain't going to work. And a lot of helicopter parents, I feel, do fuck up their children's lives. And I've known a lot of people, a lot of my friends, who can't even do the things that I do, who have disabilities and who have Asperger's and other disabilities. And they still act like little 10-year-old kids. They've never even paid their own bills in their life. Can't even pay a cell phone bill on their phone. But cognitively they can talk and they can hold a conversation, but they're just not with it. I know a guy who works for Caltrans, building trains and railroad tracks and fixing them, and he lives at home with his parents, and his parents have him come home right away after work. And this guy can't go out and have a life of his own. He joined the Marines and had shell shock and he had Asperger's and somehow got in there, slipped through the cracks, because normally the military does not allow people with Asperger's syndrome who've been medicated to join. And he was in the Afghanistan war, and he only lasted a couple months and he was booted out. And his parents treat him like a little fucking kid, and it really angers me. So I stopped hanging with the guy, because every time I try to teach my friends something, I get put down. And the parents want to make me out to be the bad guy, even though I try to teach them independence. And they think that they got to live with their parents the rest of their lives. Parents aren't going to live forever, bottom line. You need to be a man and live your life for you, not for anyone else, but for you. When your parents gave birth to you, you don't got to disrespect them. And you don't have to love them in that sense where you got to go on every gesture that they put out or what they try to mold you to be. You need to be your own man. I mean, I love my mom, but I sure as hell don't want to be her. I'm me. End of story. I hope you guys can figure it out.